everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar. Today we're going to be looking at Air Maestro version 3.3, our latest release. The format of this webinar is going to be slightly different to the usual. What we're going to do is I'm going to open up the release notes here at the bottom of the login page. And we're going to go through these changes and additions one by one. I'll show you where it is and how to take advantage of it. So first off, you can either find the release notes at the bottom of the login page, or you can go to General, Help, Release Notes once you have logged in. This timesheet alert is new. We're going to cover that in a bit more detail later. So the first item is Action Register. There are some new filters in the Action Register. To find that, we're going to click on Safety on the left-hand side, then Action Register. And we have some new filters at the top. Action type, request for corrective action, suggested improvement, or anything else that you've added there. Report type, so where these actions are stemming from, whether it's a safety occurrence of any of these types, an audit, a task, or a hazard in the hazard and risk register, or an identified risk again in the hazard and risk register. So using those, you can see actions that are of relevance to you and filter out the rest. Aircraft, display aircraft total time and service and flight records. So we're going to go to our flight record setup first of all. Going to setup, flight record setup. And as you can see, I have added this one previously. So let's go to our daily totals group. We will be holding a webinar on this custom field builder if you aren't familiar with it. That will be in January. So you can see our total time and service group down here is a cumulative time type of field. To add it, you need to click Add New Field at the top. Select cumulative time. Put in your control name and control label. There's a checkbox down here, default to current total time and service of selected aircraft. And then you also need to make it a read-only field. So your crew cannot change that value when they're logging that flight record. And once you've done that, it'll show up here in your flight records. So if I go here to our records register and go and add a flight, as soon as I select an aircraft, the total time and service will be loaded as per the aircraft register. Auditing. Audit font color, audit changelog text has been changed to white for better readability. This was a little bit of an issue on low contrast screens. So if I go to our audits, and let's open up audit number 74. Down here at the bottom left, we have report changelog. This details all of the things that have changed in this report since it was created and who has done it. And you can see the text in the header is now all white, whereas previously some of these fields were black. Custom fields, added functionality to reorder custom fields via drag and drop on the setup page. So let's head back to our flight record setup. You can see our total time and service field is at the bottom here after a line break. And previously you had to reorder them using these arrows on the left. You may now simply drag and drop, which makes life a lot easier, especially for those long pages. Added functionality to enforce uniqueness of text fields, and added functionality to set text fields to always be in uppercase. So if we come here, add a new field, select text, we have two new checkboxes at the bottom here. Enforce uppercase and enforce unique. So that's going to check it against any other text fields you may have and make sure that they're not the same. Enhanced keyboard capabilities. Upon loading a custom field tab, focus will default to the first available field. What that means is when you load a tab with custom fields in it, the cursor will automatically appear in the first one. And the developers have also improved the ability to tab through custom fields, like so. So new additions to discretion reports. We have the ability to disable discretion report emails. To find that, go to Setup, Discretion Report Setup. And at the top here, we can enable or disable emails. And when an unlodged discretion report is encountered, we now have the ability to ask the system to take no action, email the user and discretion manager only once, or continue to include that information in weekly emails for a period of 2 months. Document library, a confirmation prompt will now appear when a user moves a folder in the document library. Note that that says folder, not file. So if we go to our library and we try and move a folder, we'll now have this confirmation prompt. That does not appear when moving files themselves. Like so. Exams. Multiple exams can now be assigned from each user's personal profile, and we have an additional column. Exam submitted column has now been added. So if I come to, let's say, Mr. Dyson's profile, I can navigate to his exams, and I can choose to assign exams to this person. We have some filters at the top, name of exam, exam category, created dates, and I can apply those to filter the list of exams available for assignment. If I wish to assign one, all I need to do is tick this box on the right hand side here, click Assign Exams, and he's already got this exam, which is why I could not add it. So all I need to do is click Assign, and it will be given to that gentleman. The exam date submitted column here is new. It'll show you when that person submitted his or her previous exams. Flight records, some access level changes. This is mainly related to the new view self access controls. What this does is it prevents a person from seeing a flight record unless he or she is nominated as a member of the crew for that flight. So view self means they can see their own flight records. Edit self means they can change the details of their own flight records. Note that there is no add self, because by default, when a flight record is created, there are no crew selected. Future dates, added ability to enter a flight record for a date in the future. So we're going to head back to our flight record setup again. And at the top here, allow future entry of flights. This is useful when you want to start filling in some details of the flight record before you go and fly. Maybe you've refueled the night before, so you know how much fuel you ought to have. You can create that flight record, fill in those details so there's less to do once you've finished your flight. Collapsible sections, added functionality to collapse detail sections in flight records. If we go back to our flight record register again, and let's open up a past flight record. We now have these little icons to the left-hand side of each section of the record, so you can expand or minimize each one. These red highlights here are also new. What these are doing is comparing the time that I've entered into my crew detail section with the time specified in the flight legs. We'll look at exactly how that comparison is managed later on. But as you can see, our total block time here is 3.8 plus 3, which is 6.8. I've entered 7.8, so the system is flagging my name. Rob Daniel has entered 6.8, which is correct, so his heading is blue. Nick Hartley has not entered any information, so again it's flagging red. There have been quite a few changes in forms. We have some new form access levels, mainly related to form views, so let's go and explain what exactly those are first. Here under operations, we have our form register. I've created some form views already, but let's go to all forms, which will be the default for you. Here's our form register as you are familiar with. At the top right, we have a new button with a little plus sign. We get these options: menu name, view title, forms title, keep view private to me, show the scheduler, and scheduler title. So as this implies, you can now integrate the forms register and the scheduler and see them both on a single screen. Let's go and have a look at an example of that. So here's my ferry flights form view. I can filter out certain flight forms. So for ferry flights, maybe I only need flight clearance and movement request forms. I'll apply those filters, and then I need to save, so the filters are saved for the next time I open this view. If I click Edit, we have our menu name, which is what appears here on the left-hand side, our view title, which is what appears at the top of the screen, forms title is what appears at the top of the forms section of the screen, and scheduler title appears down here in the scheduler header. So, new access levels for form views. View all lets you see these. Modify all allows you to make changes to these. There's also a new access level for form close. Previously that was tied to modify access. It's now been split out. Set status context menu, added option per form to link quick set a custom field value via context menu in the form register. That's only for lists. User must have edit access to form. Status must not have display conditions attached to the field. So that's quite a mouthful. To explain what that does, I'm going to go to our form setup. There we go, form options. I'll choose our flight clearance form type. And we have a new button on the right-hand, drop-down list on the right-hand side. Link form shortcut commands to, and a selection of a custom field, in this case, reason for flight. So let's go back here. I have our flight clearance form here. And if I click on this drop-down list, this is our shortcut. And you can see I have three options here: maintenance, new contract, and aircraft swap. Those are the possible selections in the custom field in the form itself. Let's have a look at that. So here's reason for flight. And I can change that without needing to go into the form itself. So that could be done for any number of purposes. It depends on what you're using the forms module for, whether that's going to be useful for you or not. And we are available to help if you require it. Global and private views. Users can create global or private form views to save filters, column, and sorting settings. So that would be these settings up here, filters and columns. And when you create a new form view, you can choose to keep the view private to yourself. If you do not have the ability to create global forms, global views, then you will not be able to deselect that keep view private to me tick box. Scheduler integration. Scheduler can now be added to the bottom of the form views page, as we can see on our ferry flights. Oops. Down here. When in this mode, forms can be dragged and dropped onto the empty space in the scheduler to create a new task and automatically link to the form. Forms can also be dragged onto an existing task in the scheduler. The form can then be linked to the task that it was dropped onto. Alternatively, a new task can be created before or after with the same resources. So let's give that a go. I'm going to create a new flight clearance form. I'm going to choose the task type. This is going to be a ferry flight with this aircraft, which is a 206. I'm going to ignore the routing and ignore the rest of this because I've not marked it as mandatory and I don't want to waste our time. And I'll submit that form. So that'll now change to open. I can go back to the register. And here we have Flight Clearance Form 4. If I have a task to perform for that, I can then drag this down. Let's do it out of Gamston on the 29th at midday. It's automatically selected ferry flight in Gamston for me. I can put in 3.3 webinar. Let's make it from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And let's put in, this is also a new, let's put in an aircraft. And a pilot. So there are also some other new features here, which I'm going to go through a bit later when we get to the scheduler. So linked forms, we can see that Flight Clearance Form 4 has been added, and I can choose to link a different form another form as well. Here's our reason for flight, quick set field, and I'll review and save. Now we have our task down here. I can click on that, and there's a hyperlink to the form over there. If I wish to add another form to that, I can drag and drop, link to existing task, or create new task with existing resources, and that'll take me through the wizard again. Linked tasks column. Added ability to have a linked tasks column that will display the linked tasks as they would appear in the scheduler with tooltip. So I can go pick columns on the right hand side, select linked tasks, and update. And here we have the relevant tasks. And I can click on that and again see the details. Some global changes, a date change format, added functionality to change site-wide date format from day, month, year to full date. This is not something you can do on your side, so please drop us a mail if you'd like that done. Attached documents file indicator. A file icon will now display on the Documents tab when a file is attached. So if we come and find a safety report with some documents in it, and here's one, Flight 112. There's now a new indicator to show that files have been attached to this report. And that applies to audits, the Hazard and Risk Register, and safety reports. Pilot licenses, we now support the ability to have several different types of customizable licenses. To begin with, I will show you setup. Air Maestro data. From here I will select license type, and here's a table with the various types of licenses that you'd like to record. So this can be used for all sorts of things, student pilot licenses, fixed or rotor wing, or different issuing authorities. So I could, for example, say FAA ATPL. Oops. Add that. And then when I come to my endorsements page, or the endorsements page of any pilot, we now have a table here rather than a checkbox list as it was previously. I can select that and put in the license number. This also reflects on my details page, and when a person logs a safety report, it will appear as this table. RPAS and UAV hours have added to the logbook summary. If I come to my logbook over here, we have total RPAS hours at the top. The way to have hours actually logged towards that is you need to set up the RPAS in the aircraft type setup. So we go to setup at the top right, aircraft type setup. You can put in your details, your DOC 8643 code, so for example C172 for Cessna 172. Manufacturer, model, description would be remotely piloted aircraft system, engine count, engine type, and then you add it. I'm not going to do that for the moment. If you have an aircraft already on the system, which is an RPAS, which has been loaded as something else, you'll need to do this step. Go to the aircraft register, open the aircraft, go to general details, edit it, and then just change the manufacturer and aircraft type to the new entry. We also have another new feature that ties in there, is recency type combining. So it is possible to create a recency that automatically generates a new entry for each type a person is endorsed on, and we now have the ability to combine various types for the purposes of recency. So these would remain, in this case AS332 and AS333, would remain as separate endorsements on the pilot's endorsements page, but in the recency itself you would have a new combined type name of AS332. To add items, simply click Add New Record, choose the combined type name here, and which type code, this is your DOC 8643 code, you'd like to enter. Alright, locations. Google Maps has been added to the locations register. So we'll go to Operations, Locations. It's present in bases and locations, but we're going to look at locations for now. And let's have a look at Kruger International Airport. So on our details page, we now have a map over on the right. You'll note that this is not actually zoomed in because I have not entered the GPS coordinates. But let's say, for example, that I don't know the GPS coordinates. I can simply type here in the search box, Kruger International Airport, and it'll enter those for me. I can click OK. And it'll now be saved. We also have the satellite view available. So this is pretty useful if you're flying somewhere that you're unfamiliar with. You can get a good idea of the layout of the airfield and plan your approach, look for obstacles, etc. If you do not know, if you do know the, I beg your pardon, if you do know the coordinates of your field, you can enter it here and the map will take those into account. So even if your airfield's not listed on Google Maps, you can still get a fix on it. Logbook, allow date range when printing the logbook. So this is present in my timesheets. I can go to Tools at the top right, Print, Pilot Logbook, and then click with date range. So let's say I want to do the last 6 months. We'll do June to November, print, and that will export a logbook summary for me. Recency, crewman flight hours, add a new timesheet recency item linked to pilot and crew hours. So let's say, for example, that in order for my third crewman, my load masters or anything like that, to be considered recent, the company states that they must have done 12 hours of flight time in the last 30 days. In order to set that up, I'd go to my recency setup. I'd put in a timesheet item. I'll say they need 12 hours in a period of 30 days, and I'll get a caution. I suppose 4 weeks is a bit long. Let's make it 1 week. Link to fields, crewman hours. This is the new one. Total hours rather than day or night, and on all flights. And I'll click OK. So the ability to do that for crewmen is new, whereas it was always there for pilots. Daily notification of updated recency item. there's the option to turn on daily email notifications for updated recency items to assigned contacts. To have this, you need to go to Recency Settings and Roles, enable Daily Recency Update Summary Emails, and then for each recency item you have under Personnel, you will have a checkbox, Email Contacts when this recency item is updated. That will send the contacts a summary email once a day, telling them what's been changed and what's been updated, in case you need to go and double check the veracity of those documents that have been uploaded. In order to receive those, you must go to Personnel Wizard and enable Receive Scheduled Emails at the bottom of the Details page. Recency Grace Period is also new. So if I edit this recency item, we have grace period here, and you can put in days or months. Rostering, copying roster rows, add a checkbox option to copy notes and attachments. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, when you roster crew, you can add notes and attachments for them to view. And if I go to copy mode, there's now a checkbox to indicate whether you'd like to copy the notes and attachments as well. Base department view toggle, added option to roster menu to switch base department hierarchy. So this is quite useful if you have a centralized rostering center. You can have your roster split by base and then by department. But if you have department-specific roster personnel, then you can go Menu, switch base department hierarchy, and you'll have all of your pilots grouped together, and then base by base, all of your aircraft, your engineers, or any other departments that you're choosing to roster. Roster touring, this is included in scheduling, so we'll cover that shortly. Unsaved changes, when updating roster, unsaved changes to the task will display in the preview. Again, this comes in with roster touring. Safety reporting, editable actions by requestee. This is a long requested feature that's now is available to you. Added global setting to allow requestee to update action. If enabled, the requestee can edit the root cause, remedial, and corrective actions only. That is in addition to the usual response field. To find that, go to Setup, Safety Options, and allow request for corrective action requestee to edit root cause, remedial, and corrective action. Simply click on that and click OK. From this point on, when a requestee responds to an action like this, I've been assigned this action here from Rob. I can click on those icons, and I can now edit these fields. Note that I cannot change the status, the due date, or anything else. Full name display. The selector for Chief Safety Officer and Safety Officers have now been changed from only showing last name and initial to displaying the full name. So if I come back to our safety setup, these are now full names. And similarly, where you have base-specific personnel, there are also full names displayed rather than Peterson L. Timesheets, notification when submitting a timesheet with no flight hours. I have prepared an example for us previously. Here are my timesheets for the month of November, and you'll note that on Monday the 4th, there is a blue icon stating that I have not submitted any flight hours, so ICAS, dual, command, or co-pilot for this day. You will be notified of that when you submit the timesheet. You'll be notified when signing off on a month that contains incomplete flight hours, and you'll have hyperlinked dates to go and review that and hopefully correct it. Added information under the alerts page. That's what we saw when I logged in. I can go and review my alerts at the top left, have a look at my timesheet alerts, and there it is. Setting to enable these alerts per department is found under the alert setup. Here. And you can choose which departments you want that to be enabled for. Work practice and flight duty limitation changes. So before we get into that, if you recall, I mentioned that we'd look at how to control those red header warnings in the crew details. That's done here. You need to define what the flight start and flight end are in terms of the custom fields in your legs. And then you set a tolerance. So in this case, if there's more than a 15-minute discrepancy between my crew and my leg detail times, that red highlight will appear. Note that this is also necessary in order to use the hours and X hour control, which I'll show you shortly. Start and end of duties checkbox. So if I open up a work practice of hours and add a control, we'll look at a duty control so this is hours in X hours. We have the ability to only check at start or end of duties performed on this day and at end of day, rather than checking it every hour throughout the person's shift. Standby calculation limits. Added option to standby limitations to cap at a certain number of hours. So if I open up our standby limitations here for home reserve, under the South African regulations, this is capped at 1 for 1 or 8 hours for a period of 24, whichever is less. So to set that up, we have a count 100% of standby, capped at 8 hours total. Check FDP within a duty period. So we'll go back and add a duty control again. Make it apply to flight duty. And we have an option here, X hours in the encompassing duty period. Flight hours, work practice control. That is this control here, hours in an X hour period. Percentage of standby, maximum standby that can be counted as duty. We've looked at that. The worked hours rule is also new. This is a different type of control called worked hours. And you can see this is standby plus duty performed outside of the standby must not exceed X amount of hours in a certain period. And that's it for the work practices. Scheduling, ease of use changes. Let's go and have a look at our scheduler. When you assign resources to a scheduled task, the system will order those resources in order of how suitable it feels those are. So it's done by, is it at the same base? Does it have other tasks on this day? Is it online or offline in the case of aircraft, or does it have work practice exceedances, recencies, etc.? Let me clear all of these. And this sorting order has been optimized to work a little bit better. We have the ability to automatically fill slots with a first preferred resource, so the most suitable. And that's down here. Automatically apply first match to all required slots, which is these two. There's no good slot for an aircraft, so I'm going to select one manually. Let's save this for the moment. We'll come back to it shortly. We have the ability to auto-refresh the scheduler. This is quite helpful when you have multiple people working on it. And to start that auto-refreshing, just click on that play button there. This can be enabled or disabled in the scheduling setup. Down here under global settings, enable auto-refresh and the time period in which it's going to do so. Additional scroll bar and zoom modes. There's now the ability to scroll left and right as well as up and down. If you do not wish to use that, you can simply click Fit to Screen and it'll display as so. And new zoom modes, 12 and 24-hour rolling periods. Roster publishing. So let's go back and have a look at the task we created. And we'll go to our Review and Save tab. And we can see that I'm actually just going to change Matt Smith to someone less suitable. Let's go for Samira. So we can see that the system is throwing up some questions. This aircraft is not toured to a base associated with this task, and the same for the person. We can actually go and change that from the scheduler now, provided that you have the correct access. So we can put in a touring period to a certain base for certain dates. Through that. That's been applied, and we can then go and publish it. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So we just need to refresh that screen, and you'll see that's now correct. This person's also not been rostered for a task on this day, and we can change that as well. So we'll select a shift, let's say scheduled. We have our standard times as set up in the roster. We can attach notes and files, insert, and we can then go and publish this day. And it's giving us a warning. This person is not rostered to be on duty or standby for the entirety of this task. The reason for that is our task starts at 12 and ends at 1. And our shift goes 8 till 12 and then 2 till 6. So again, we can edit this by double clicking on it. And we'll change the end date, the end time for the first session to 1 o'clock. And we'll leave the rest as is. Update that, and then publish. You can see it's giving us a warning that this data is still unpublished. And if we go back here, that's now correct. So that's one of the nice new additions. We'll save that. Context menu additions. We now have the ability to delay or divert a task straight from the context menu. As we've seen before, the context menu is brought up by right-clicking on a task. We can delay divert. We can either divert it by changing the route here, or we can enter a delay, let's say 60 minutes, because the shuttle broke down. Apply, and you can see that all of the tasks that we've selected have been delayed by 60 minutes, and you can do that as many times as you like. Our time there has now changed. Added functionality to create another task with or without the same resources. So we can right click, use same resources to create a new task of the same type. You see we have two more options here, which we'll go into in more detail now. When we look at the scheduling setup. So let me do that in a new tab. We'll go to our task type setup, and you'll see that there are several new additions to this page. The first one, clone time offset. So if you create a new task of the same type, by default for a charter flight, that will be 30 minutes after the conclusion of the previous one. Standard duration is 90 minutes long, which will automatically populate those fields in the scheduling wizard. The default task status, show in context menu. You can see I only have training and charter flight here, ticked here. So when I use same resources, I can select training and charter flight. Enabled tabs. We now have the ability to enable or disable tabs in the scheduling setup. So for example, for a ferry flight, like this one, the likelihood of that being a recurring task is very slim, so I've disabled that tab. You can also choose to link it to crew duty times, either duty, FDP, or both. This is a flight, so it'll be linked to both. Flight record integration, whether the details that you've entered are expanded or collapsed by default when linked to a flight record. The linked forms tab we've seen before. When we edit it, we have linked forms, provided, of course, that it's been enabled in our enabled tabs. And you can select a form to link according to these filters down here. I beg your pardon, it's also possible to rename those tabs by clicking in these fields here. And that's almost it. Integration, Skynet integration, if you're using that, which I don't think many of our customers are, you can look at that. We do support integration with other systems, so if you're interested, please let us know. We've added location and task type custom fields to provide integration between the fields on a form and the task. So let's have a look at our flight clearance form again. Form tabs. And down here we have flight clearance. Here's our task type and our we can add a location type. Schedule task type is here. And location. And those will link to the relevant fields in the scheduling setup, scheduling wizard. And we've added support for tasks that last longer than 24 hours. Here in the task details tab, you can select multi-day task, select the ending date and the end time on that date as usual. And that's it. I hope you found this informative. If you require any assistance with implementing any of these changes, please do not hesitate to contact help@cairnaviation.com for Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, or contact help@avanet.com.au for Australasia. Thank you and have a great day.